welcome back to ESBR Boxing. Delighted as always to be joined by Danny. Danny, bit of an interesting one today. I think we've just decided to jump on this video quickly to talk about the possibility of Gervonta Davis versus Naoya Inoue happening at some point in the future. We know they've both got big fights coming up. Inoue's got the unification fight at super bantamweight against Stephen Fulton. Gervonta Davis, as we know, is facing Ryan Garcia at a catch weight at 136 pounds very soon. Yeah, feels like we're kind of living in fantasy world now. I think there's probably a few fights we could talk about certain fighters moving up and down in weight, and could this fight happen? Could that fight happening? What's your general response to this kind of being spoken about as a possibility in the future?
Yeah, thanks for having us on again, Elliot. I think we should just add the caveat that we're not just plucking this out of our arses, that Gervonta Davis has spoken out. Was it today about, I'm assuming he was asked about it, about the possibility of a fight with Inoue, and he said he'd be up for it, basically, and that he thinks Inoue would be too small for him. Yeah, it would be, imagine, like, would this be like the biggest fight below maybe lightweight ever? It'd be up there, like maybe take away some of Mayweather ones in the 90s. But yeah, it'd be huge. Two really entertaining fighters. Two of the fighters probably, like, in terms of pound for pound knockout artists, they're both bang up there, you'd have to say. Will it happen? I mean, I would think probably not. Gervonta Davis obviously fighting at 136 against Ryan Garcia, and Inoue's just moved up to 122, but I thought it'd be a serious fight.
Yeah, I think just to like read out the quote, Gervonta Davis was asked about this fight at a catch weight, and he replied, probably that would be a fun fight, that would be technical, but I'd be too big for him. As you mentioned, kind of Davis fighting at catch weight in his next fight, weighed in at 134 pounds in his last fight against Hector Garcia, which was at the beginning of this year. I think we'd agree if this fight was ever going to happen. I don't think it would happen soon. If it was to happen in the future, what weight do you think we'd be talking about? Inoue was at bantamweight for a very long time. Just about to make his debut at super bantamweight. I'm not convinced we'd see him fight above featherweight. Personally, I just don't think he's going to be big enough to fight above featherweight in his career. He's 29 years old now, and Gervonta Davis has kind of moved up and down the weights in his career. We don't know where he's going to be for the next year or so. Is it going to be at lightweight? Is it going to be at super lightweight? I don't know, to be honest. Interested to get your opinion on that as well. But yeah, if this fight was ever going to kind of be seriously discussed, what sort of weight do you think we'd be looking at here?
I agree with you in terms of Inoue and his ceiling probably being featherweight. That said, Davis fought Santa Cruz at like 129, I think. He's obviously fought as low as featherweight as well. I can't see him going back down to featherweight. I think 130 is probably as low as you'd see Garcia go. And for a one-off, could Inoue come up to 130? And imagine he walks around at like, 135, so not beyond the realms of possibility. But I can't imagine Davis going back into the 120s. And like, Inoue is a big star in Japan. Like, he sells out 15,000 seaters arenas like every fight. So is a payday with Davis going to be enough to draw him up? I don't know, like, but I can't imagine you're going to see like Inoue up at lightweight or Davis back down at super bantam or anything like that.
Yeah, it could be tricky. I think one thing is that Davis, there's so many big fights for him at lightweight or at super lightweight, and there will be for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think, look, it's a big fight, as you mentioned earlier in the video. 2 pound for pound punches, 2 pound for pound stars as well. It would be massive. But I think I agree with you. I think that also Gervonta Davis is 28 now. In a couple of years' time, it could be a bit more difficult for him to make, say, lightweight or especially super featherweight. So I think if this fight was ever going to happen, it would have to be in the next 18 months, in my opinion. Otherwise, it gets that bit more difficult for Davis to come down to the weight.
One thing I would just say though, right? So like, we're both in agreement that this seems a bit far fetched, but like in terms of like the size difference. There's a far bigger size difference between Josh Taylor and Gervonta Davis than there is between, like, Josh Taylor's huge for 140. Like, I know he's very tight at the weight and stuff, but I'd imagine Inoue and Davis are probably the same height. Like, I know that Davis is thicker, but I don't like. It's a shame. I think it's maybe just where they're at in their careers that it won't happen. But that just came to my head that's a far bigger size difference for my money, and like that would look comical in the ring. Like Josh Taylor, like nearly 6 foot tall.
Yeah, and look, we said we were having a discussion last night, and kind of the phrase "Wild West" keeps sticking in my mind. And in boxing, you can never quite count these things out. Another example that screams out to me is Chris Eubank Jr. against Conor Benn. Conor Benn welterweight, Chris Eubank middleweight. That fight was signed at 157 catch weight last year. That fight could be signed again for 160 pounds this year. So these fights are possible. I think there's a lot to agree on, and I think the weight is such an important thing there. I just wonder, one thing I would love would be if Inoue can clean up at super bantamweight, which I'm not saying he's going to do, but if he does, if he then screams out for that big fight, whether it's against Gervonta Davis, Devin Haney, Lomachenko, I would love it if he does that, because those fights would be massive, and those fights would give a lower weight guy like Inoue the worldwide exposure that he deserves, really. Because that's one thing about Inoue. Me and you know who he is, but the random person in the street probably doesn't. Whereas they might have heard of Gervonta Davis or Lomachenko. So yeah, couple more questions for me, Danny. Would you want to see that fight happen?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's a complete foregone conclusion. Like, you would make Davis a favourite, I would have thought. You'd imagine he'd be heavier, but not to the point where like it's a farce. I wouldn't have thought. It's a hard one to even imagine, you know. Like, you would have more faith in Davis's power affecting Inoue than vice versa, even though Inoue is showing a granite chin and he's knocked people up from light flyweight. I'd love to see the fight purely because it would definitely be the biggest lower weight class fight in my time, like following boxing. Saying lower as in below lightweight. Yeah, no, I would love to see it.
Good stuff. I think final question from me, Danny. If this fight was to happen at, let's say, 130 pounds in a year's time, where would you lean towards? Would you go with Davis?
130. Probably you'd have to, like, as I said there, Inoue started out at light flyweight, and you'd imagine continuing to put on size, and again, being undersized is bound to start having an effect. In saying that, he took a flush left hook off Daenerys, who's campaigned up at featherweight. Didn't seem to have too much an effect, but no, I would edge Davis, I think.
Yeah. We will see what happens. Okay, we'll see what happens. And Gervonta Davis' next fight against Ryan Garcia. We'll see where Inoue is after the fight against Stephen Fulton. Maybe they both could lose, and then this fight will, and then who knows? Maybe we'll be talking about Ryan Garcia against Inoue or whatever. Danny, been fun to discuss this with you. Yeah, we'll see if anything comes of it in the next couple of weeks. See if Inoue's got a response. But yeah, we will see. But yeah, been great to discuss this with you, and I'll speak to you again soon. Okay.
No worries, mate. Thanks.